Hello, 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 everyone. JLR Investigates. Come on in, come on in. Good morning, everyone. 10/29/2024. Month is almost over, folks. Come on in. Richard Allen, Delphi murder case. Going to get Magnolia in the chat. Day 9 yesterday was completed. Day 9 of the trial. Started, week and a half ago. And we are here at this day talking about DNA and blood splatter. A lot was revealed in court yesterday. The state brought a DNA expert with the Indiana State Police, or she works and contracts with them, and she testified. We're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk about blood splatter, and we're just going to talk about the Richard Allen case in general. A lot going on. We've been covering this case extensively. We were boots on the ground, as you might or might not know. And it's interesting, to say the least. Is Richard Allen guilty or not guilty? That is the question. Is he bridge guy or is he not bridge guy? That is the question. JLR Investigates. Come on in. Almost Halloween, folks. Halloween. And has the state, have they given a case thus far? Are they convincing the jury beyond a reasonable doubt that Richard Allen is guilty? I'm not so sure. There's a lot of people in the courtroom that come out and share. Some journalists, some YouTubers, some podcasters, and it does paint a picture here, folks. For me, it's like, whoa. Because I wanted to think they got the guy, and I still think they got the guy. But you got to prove you got the guy. And thus far, I'm not so sure they've proven anything, particularly with the new bombshell information revealed yesterday. No DNA of Richard Allen. No DNA of Richard Allen found on the victims or at the scene. Now, what in the world is going on? See, what's so weird about this case is I compare it to Brian Kohlberger in Moscow, Idaho. With Brian Kohlberger, DNA is supposed DNA found at the scene, and the prosecution is assuming he's guilty. But in this case, no DNA, but they're assuming he's guilty. It's weird. No DNA, and you're going to convict? When it comes to murders, it's going to be a tough one, folks. Is he factually innocent? Is Richard Allen factually innocent? Is he bridge guy? And even if he is bridge guy, does that make bridge guy the murderer? Are they railroading an innocent man? Are they framing someone else? Are they just pinning it on someone because of election year for the sheriff, or just to solve a crime, the most horrendous crime in Carroll County history? I don't know. But what I do know is this guy's on trial, and the process is going through. Every day, every day. How much longer the prosecution has? Well, I guess the next steps for the prosecution is do these 60 alleged confessions. Break down each day. I wonder if that's going to take days. I think they're going to, I think the prosecution is going to finish this week. I really do, at the end of the week. So which would be about 2 weeks into it. This Friday would be 2 weeks. What do you think? Excluding the jury, getting the jury impaneled. A lot of people count those days as part of the trial. I don't. I usually count the days when it actually starts. People are saying confessions, his alleged confessions is, 60 times that he confessed to whoever. Well, remains to be seen. Probably jailhouse informants, probably people on the telephone, maybe even prison staff. Should it be thrown out? Let's get Magnolia in the chat. Let's talk about what happened yesterday. The best part of waking up is JLR in your cup. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. All right, we're going to get Magnolia in the chat, and we're going to talk. Hello, Magnolia.
Hold on, let me turn this down. There we go.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Everyone, wakey, everyone.
I know.
Back in court today. Back in court today.
Yeah, they're about to start right now, I think, as we speak.
9 a.m. Like clockwork.
Yeah. Yep. They had a full day yesterday that was pretty much focused on DNA almost entirely. It seems like the whole day was centered around the DNA and then also the crime scene itself and how they think the crime was committed. Comparing like how Libby was found and how Abby was found and just different details like that. That's what happened yesterday. But they also reiterated once again, no DNA at the crime scene that was connected to Richard Allen. No DNA at Richard Allen's home connected to Libby and Abby. So there was some DNA, though, that was talked about. It got kind of confusing for some people, I think. They kind of went through and said that there was possible unknown male DNA, like fluids, but they said something about they didn't think that was particularly unusual, and that there wasn't enough DNA to really test anything. And the only DNA that we know about now is the hairs found in, I think it's Abby's hand. They finally confirmed that hair belonged to Kelsey German, Libby's sister. They also said that it was only finally tested a couple weeks ago.
So does that mean her DNA carried over to what just was on her and just carried on with her to the trail?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what they think. It's maybe because the hair was on the clothing. A lot of times, like, hair just stays on stuff, especially for girls and women. Like, my hair's everywhere. I had a sweatshirt I washed the other day, and I pulled it out of the dryer, and it had a few hairs stuck to it. I had to pull it off, so hairs kind of can stay around. And so I guess that's what their theory is, that
oh wait, I might have your
a family member.
I might have your DNA right here.
Uh-oh.
Got Magnolia's DNA. Look, you can see it.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, you can see it.
Yeah, any woman that's had long hair knows the struggle.
Got Magnolia's DNA. Does that make me a criminal? Smooth criminal?
No, well, I think, so there were, they kind of, let's get these names of these people who testified yesterday.
Yeah, Stacy.
I didn't memorize their names, but the DNA lady was Stacy Bozinovski. She's a forensic scientist, DNA analyst at the Indiana State Police Crime Lab. And she went through all the swabs and different things that were tested for DNA.
Does she still work for them?
Stacy, I think she does, yes. The other witness who testified in the afternoon, that testified about the crime scene, he has since changed jobs, from what I understand. But yeah, I think she said she is currently a forensic scientist at the Indiana State Crime Lab. But yeah, she was on the stand. I think it was pretty much most of the morning, most of the first half of the day. But right away, one of the first updates that came out of the trial yesterday around lunchtime was this discussion about how she said swabs from the girls indicated possible semen, but no semen detected.
Okay, so break that down. What does that mean?
That was one of the first updates that came out yesterday. Everyone was like, what What does that mean? She said male DNA was found on some swabs. However, the analyst testified that finding male DNA on some of the areas swabbed was not necessarily an unusual result.
Interesting.
How is that? I don't get that. That was such an odd statement, and I know, like, for a lot of the day yesterday, a lot of people were trying to decipher what that meant, but ultimately she said that this particular unknown, possible, whatever, was negligible to be tested. There really wasn't anything to it. So, I mean, but what does that even mean? I don't get it.
Well, if you don't get it, and I don't get it, and I'm sure the viewers don't get it, you think the jury's going to get it? That's what I'm saying.
Question.
Like,
it's a good question. It's like, huh? What? And then she goes on to say, but there's no DNA of Richard Allen anywhere at the crime scene. There's no DNA at Richard Allen's house of the two girls. So the whole entire testimony from her boiled down to there's no DNA that connects Richard Allen to this crime. And the only DNA that they did find and that was confirmed is the hair, like we just said, the hair of Kelsey German. So that's pretty much the entire extent of confirmed DNA we have in this case is Kelsey German's hair.
So, Magnolia, what is the point of bringing her on?
That's what I've been saying. Like, what's the purpose of any of these people so far? I mean, every single one of them either creates incredible doubt,
confusion
of Richard Allen's guilt, or some of them directly undermine the prosecution's case. So what is the point? I don't understand the point of having all those eyewitnesses come up one after another saying they couldn't ID him, they're describing other people. They're describing a completely different car that they saw. Like, how is this helping their case? All these people just one after another, just completely undermining everything. I don't get it.
Is it because if prosecution doesn't call them, maybe the defense would call them?
Well, that has to be what it is. I mean, yeah, it's like, I think in this case, it's a murder trial, so you're sort of locked in. You're going to have to call a DNA expert. You're going to have to call the detectives that investigated and any witnesses and things like that. But it's just, honestly, it's like, in my perspective, each and every witness has made the case weaker. Because people kept saying, like, maybe they were like, the DNA expert will be up next week, so maybe there's something that we don't know yet. Maybe, they found something, and maybe that's the bombshell. And then, womp womp, that was it. Yesterday, that was it. So she went through all this, like, it was, again, a lot of people characterized it as, like, excruciating detail and just, a lot of technical type stuff. However, you had sent me the update from Bob Siegel, and he said he actually made mention of, let me find it, of the jurors' questions. So one thing that's really been interesting in this case is that the jury gets to ask their own questions of the witnesses. What they do is they write down questions they have, and then the judge and the prosecution chooses what questions are asked. So they asked, they asked specifically about the DNA. They said, what type of quality controls are utilized for DNA reagents? Can drugs or inhalants impact DNA strands? How do you handle chimeras? And Bob Siegel remarked, "Holy smokes, some of these jurors really know a thing or two about DNA. Based on those questions, it seems that some of them know their way around DNA a little bit." So I thought that's interesting that they're so engaged in asking questions like that.
Yeah, it's Siegel actually put her after she hit the stand. He actually tweeted her leaving. This is her leaving, getting into her car. So she parked across the street. This is who testified. There she is.
Stacy Bozinovski.
Yeah. So after she testifies, she's done. But see, okay, so here's what I'm saying. Thus far, you have no witnesses that put Richard Allen on the scene. You have Holman testifying that he didn't confess to any police interrogation and make any confessions whatsoever. The bullet expert really had no smoking gun on Richard Allen. Now you got a DNA expert that's saying no DNA on Richard Allen.
Yeah.
I mean, how is this even a case?
Right. Well, I think that's what a lot of people are saying right now. And then everyone's like,
I mean, this is thus far.
Oh, Andrea, Austin said that Andrea, now I haven't watched Andrea from last night. She does really detailed commentary. She apparently writes down like almost word for word what is said in the courtroom, and then she goes through it at night. Austin said Andrea Burkhart said a couple of jurors are rolling their eyes when the experts admit they didn't follow through with some testing.
That's gonna that's gonna hurt. I'm telling you, that's gonna be the. I mean, that's kind of like, you know, yes, that's gonna hurt the prosecution's case, because it's showing that they're not doing follow-ups and they're not doing proper investigated techniques, and you know, to secure the crime scene and things like that.
Yeah, and that hair, the hair apparently was talked about quite a bit yesterday. They had it's like there's a whole series of excuses as to why it wasn't tested, and I guess they said that some hairs from the crime scene were sent to the FBI. FBI concluded 3 hairs were not consistent with Abby and Libby. There are some new technologies that can test hairs without a root attached. However, the lab didn't do that because success rates are low and testing would destroy the sample. So this is kind of a summary of the excuses as to why they didn't test the hair. So it was known that there were 3 hairs that did not match Abby and Libby. So they were saying that basically they didn't have the right technology to test hairs without a root attached, and even though there was a lab they could have used that has the technology to test those types of hairs that would also preserve the evidence and not destroy the evidence, they decided they didn't feel like doing it. It wasn't that important because it was a female. They knew it was a female's hair, and they were only focusing on male suspects. That is literally what they testified yesterday.
That's crazy. You shouldn't focus on all possible suspects, male or female. Like any suspect.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially knowing how many people were there that day. You know, now that we know it was an unusually busy day that day. There was a lot of people out and about. Knowing all those people coming and going and different things, why it just doesn't make any sense. Like, first of all, why would you conclude, if you don't know who the killer is, why would you just conclude that it has to be a man? First of all, where did they make that conclusion?
Profilers would probably say the type of crime was done by a male. Statistics.
Yeah. Well, yeah, statistically and all those things, but that doesn't really mean it was definitely a man, because they don't have any evidence. They don't have any evidence. No DNA, no nothing. They really have no clue. So it just seems bizarre that they would just say, oh, by the way, back then when this happened in 2017, all the way up until 2022 into 2023 even, the Indiana police and the prosecutors continued to say that entire time that they believed more people could be involved. Nick McClelland said that.
Yes.
Nick McClelland literally said after Rick Allen was arrested in October 2022, after that he said he believes there's more people involved. Still at that time, they believed more people. So if that's what you think all these years, and that was 5.5 years into it, if you have thought this whole time there could be more people involved, why on earth would you automatically exclude a female's hair just because you don't think that a female would cut someone's throat or whatever? How do you know a female didn't help, didn't restrain someone, didn't something? You don't know that. So it's just crazy, and they came up with all these excuses. It's all these excuses, just one after another, that we keep hearing. It's like there's no evidence that Richard Allen was Mirandized before on the day that he was arrested, before the interrogation, but
because they're missing, because that's coincidentally missing that clip.
But they're like, trust me, bro, you just can't see it. We had technical difficulties. Like, that's all this jury has been hearing, like day in, day out, is like one technical difficulty after another, these piles of excuses as to why they didn't test the hair. By the way, that hair from Kelsey German was only confirmed like 2 weeks ago. I mean, the trial started 2 weeks ago.
Here's a picture of Richard Allen, the sketch. I've been looking at these sketches. Here's just one. Is he wearing a Hawaiian shirt? Like, it doesn't look like it's a suit that he's wearing.
That's what people were saying. I think it's just I think it's like a blue long sleeve button up shirt with maybe like a bluish green type of pattern. But yeah, we got a new sketch artist yesterday that started. So remember the ones last week that looked like some like bootleg Charlie Brown artist?
Yeah, bootleg Charlie Brown artist. Yep.
Yeah, the one who drew, there was one sketch of Richard Allen from last week that looked just like Charlie Brown. It was completely ridiculous. So that just sort of added to the farce that we're all watching, but they got a better sketch artist, I guess. So that was one of the pictures. I saw a couple other ones that were pretty good.
It's just so crazy that no direct evidence is linking Allen to this at this time. None. Because the bullet is like, the bullet didn't really, I don't think the bullet swayed the jury anyway either.
No.
Because it's showing it could be anybody's gun.
Yeah, I don't see how it could have, because that testimony literally concluded with inconclusive. Possible it could match another gun. That was literally how that testimony ended after a whole day. So I don't think that moved the needle very much. Also, I thought when I was watching, maybe it moved the needle in Richard Allen's favor. Each person that testifies. But it certainly is not helping the prosecution's case. But I thought it was interesting. Andrea Burkhart, I don't think we mentioned this. And sorry if anyone's taking a drink of something right now, but apparently they found like 3 or 4 handguns in the river during this investigation.
That's crazy too. Yeah, I heard that. Whose guns were they?
I don't know, but it was like the first I ever heard of this. Like, what do you mean you found all these guns? So Andrea Burkhart was going over that part of it the other night, and she was just saying, like, it seems like in Indiana, gun ownership is very popular. There's a lot of hunters. It's very common for people to go into the woods with guns. And so when you think about it in that frame, it's like, okay, it's possible that a .40 caliber bullet would just be found in the woods, and they also testified that it's not unusual at all for there to be bullets all over the woods. So when you add that context, it's gun ownership's very popular.
Do they hunt back there?
Fishing, hunting.
I mean, do people hunt back there? Do people or just take target practice back there? Is that I didn't hear any gunshots when back there, but who's to say that people just don't go back there and start just shooting at trees? And I mean, it seems like in that area, that is the most wooded area of the county. It looks like, or it's a place where you have more seclusion. Because once you go outside that area there, it's all like farmland.
Yeah.
I mean, you got a creek tucked in there, an old bridge, rolling hills.
Yeah. Well, it's just crazy that it's just crazy that I never heard this about them finding all these guns in the river. So they found I think she said there were four handguns that they found in the river, and they were kind of older. Some of them had a lot of gunk in them. And I guess that they had tested them, but they didn't match the crime scene or the bullet. They were a different type of caliber, I think she said. I think they were 45 caliber or 9mm or something like that, not 40 caliber, which is what this particular bullet was. But
what was the caliber of bullet? Remind the viewers what the caliber of bullet was.
So the unspent bullet at the scene was a Winchester 40 caliber, and they're saying that it fits Richard Allen's 6-hour P226 handgun. But 40 caliber is 40 caliber. It can fit in a bunch of different guns. It's not just that specific gun. When you buy ammo, it doesn't fit only one gun. It's different guns it can fit, which is what happened when they went over that evidence. It boils down to this bullet could have come, or it could have cycled through a variety of different guns. So inconclusive. But I just thought that was an interesting tidbit about finding multiple guns in the creek right there near the crime scene that were unrelated to the crime. It just kind of shows you that, maybe it's not so unusual for a bullet to be found in the woods. So I thought that was an interesting aside. But yeah, so yeah, Mike said, don't police carry 40 caliber. Yeah, some departments do. It just depends what the department issues to them. But yeah, I think that it is popular for law enforcement. So, anything else?
But here's
on the DNA.
No, I mean, what I'm saying is with the bullet, man. If you got guns found in a creek there, and you got an area that people travel about, I mean, it could have been the bullet could have just been there just to be there, coincidental. Bullets could be all over the place.
Well, and that's kind of what I'm leaning towards. That's what I think it was, especially because
it's not enough for proof, though. It's Allen's bullet. It's just not enough.
Well, it's also the other thing that has me kind of leaning towards that is that it wasn't just laying on the ground. The bullet was in the ground. It was in the ground. Which means, to me, it could have been there for some time. It was pushed into the ground so that you could only see the cap, the little end cap of it, whatever that's called.
I wonder if any of the defense witnesses will be neighbors around there that will testify that they, on normal days there or any days during the course of the year, do you hear gunshots back there?
Mm-hmm.
Do you hear gunshots? Is there hunters back there? They're just people out there just targeted practicing and things going out there. I mean, that would be a great question to ask because
Yeah.
if they say yeah, then hello, people shoot guns back there. You know, it's like you go to places in the country and you see like bullets in the signs, the road signs. I mean, people go around there and they just shoot. Boom, 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 boom. Test their
Yeah.
guns. A place to test their guns. They go back in the woods.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not because this bullet wasn't a hunting bullet, was it?
Loud.
Well, it's not a hunting bullet, right?
It's for a handgun. Yeah, it's for a handgun. So I mean, I don't think you typically would use a handgun as a preferred hunting weapon, but you can for certain things. And Richard Allen also testified that he only carries his gun when he would go mushroom hunting or
hunting.
fishing.
What is mushroom hunting? What in the world is mushroom hunting?
I know. I looked it up. I actually made a tweet about it because I said the same thing. I was like, what? Mushroom hunting. It's like a thing people do. They forage for mushrooms, exotic mushrooms. Out in that area, the morel mushrooms are a big thing. So, they're for cooking. A lot of people think they're medicinal and things. Remember we had that famous mushroom case out of Australia, the lady who picked the poisonous mushrooms and killed her ex-husband's family. She poisoned their food with the mushrooms.
Magic mushrooms.
That was an interesting thing we learned about Richard Allen's hobbies. So he said he only carries his gun when he goes fishing or mushroom hunting. And he was doing neither that day. So he said he didn't have his gun on him that day. So I just thought that was like an interesting thing. That's, I guess, a little hobby of his. The other thing about the bullet that was talked about yesterday, actually.
It was talked about yesterday, too?
Yeah, she testified yesterday. Stacy testified that they didn't recover any DNA from the cartridge. And she said that's typical because they're so small. Mm-hmm. And cartridge is bullet. They've been using the term unspent bullet and unspent cartridge interchangeably. The technical term for it is cartridge. So she testified that they're too small to get any kind of DNA off of it.
All right, so that witness is just nothing. No smoking gun on Allen.
I'm surprised they couldn't at least get like a fingerprint or a partial fingerprint or touch DNA off of the bullet. I think that's interesting. But like I said, it seems like that particular bullet may have been there for a while because they said it was pushed down about 2 inches into the ground. So
Magnolia,
if it's in the ground, maybe it wouldn't have any type of biological material on it.
I'm looking at some people saying that, the Odinists had a holiday around the time and from February 2nd to February 13th. And it was the last day of the Odinist holiday. Do you know anything about that?
No.
Yeah, people post that and say it was an Odinist holiday. It's called enchanting, which means emerging.
Wasn't there a tweet somewhere about that? Let's see.
What I'm saying is, defense is not allowed to bring Odinist things in.
Enchanting? What's it called?
Enchanting. ENTSCHTANN. Enchanting, meaning emerging. It's an Odinist holiday from February 2nd to February 13th. And this murder just happened to happen on the 13th, the last day of this Odinist holiday.
Well, I think that information might make some people kind of go, because of what we've already heard about the scene. There, some people think that those sticks on the ground or the sticks on the bodies signified some sort of rune, ritualistic rune or something like that. And also the F on the tree, the blood mark that looked like an F on the tree. That's really unfortunate if that's true. if you're telling me that this just happened to occur on the last night of an Odinist holiday, yeah, that'll be interesting because, you know, the defense is still trying to bring that stuff in. They haven't completely given up on that. And they keep looking for ways to get it in there, sneak it in there somehow. And they're watching and listening to every witness and trying to find an avenue to open the door for that to come in.
So there's another name that testified, Pat Cicero.
Yeah, Pat Cicero. He was the one that testified in the afternoon, I believe. It was mainly to do with the crime scene itself and the way the bodies were found, the blood spatter patterns and things like that. There was previous testimony about the blood patterns, particularly with Libby. Libby had blood like all over her hands. She had blood. People noticed that she had blood that seemed to be dripping up her face, not down her face. That was something that kind of stood out to people in the courtroom when the crime scene photos were shown last week. So yesterday they had this Cicero testify about the scene and just the different theories that he had. So he kind of said that he thinks Libby was actually moved. That's what he testified to yesterday. He thinks that Libby's body, that she was killed and then her body was dragged to where she was found. And then Abby, they said her hands were completely clean, no blood. She was in pristine condition except for the cut on her throat. And they tried to describe, or they tried to kind of explain that. And it was kind of crazy because this guy Cicero, he's saying that the reason that she doesn't have blood on her hands, because it's like a reflex. Like if you have an injury to your neck, the reflex is to put your hand over your neck and try to cover up, you know, the bleeding or whatever. And since she didn't do that, apparently, he's saying he thinks that she could have been unconscious or, what did he say?
Well,
could have been unconscious when she was killed.
Well, another thing too is, you know, like me is like thinking if the girls got lured down, even if a guy had a gun, where's all the screaming and everything like that? And some people were speculating maybe they were drugged, but were they drugged or not, or put in their system to make them sedative kind of deal, like a comatose type of thing? Is that possible?
Oh yeah, I think it's definitely possible, but
because there's no resistance in like what you just said.
Yeah, it's just really interesting. And they also said that Libby, it appeared that this is really sad, and I guess the family was really upset by this, but they said that it looked like Libby actually had a tear mark on her face, like that ran down through the blood. So what he was saying is that it seemed like Libby was killed near the tree, and the blood on the tree is her blood, that she touched the tree, and then she was dragged, and he testified that maybe when she was dragged, her head fell back, and that's how come the blood seems to run up, not down. And he said it looked like there was a tear stain as well. So that's really sad. It almost sounds like he also said that Abby, the other reason he said Abby could have been clean, hands clean, all that stuff. He said unconscious or restrained. That was the other thing he said. She could have been restrained or unconscious. Now, if she had been drugged, if they had been drugged, I think that's something we would know by now from toxicology and things like that. I don't think we've heard a lot of testimony about toxicology yet, but it seems like if drugs were found in their system, we would surely know that by now. So he suggested she was restrained or otherwise unconscious. And then he was also asked by the defense if they thought it was possible that one person could do this, or could there have been more people who did this, like as in one person restraining Abby and the other one doing the crime. And he testified, yes, that there could have been more than one person involved in the crime. So just once again, over and over, we just keep getting reasonable doubt, over and over and over and over.
And nothing direct at Alan. Like he's the guy, this is the proof, and really it's just a fog of speculation.
Yeah, and it really does look like they just saw, it just does, it really appears that they supposedly came across his tip 5 years into it and thought, well, he looks like a good fit, and then they pretty much made it fit. That's kind of how this looks, like a reverse engineer. You get the guy, it's like that phrase, show me the man, I'll show you the crime. Jerry Holm specifically said those words to him, except in a much more vulgar way. He said, I know you're guilty of something, and I'm going to find out what it is. That was how they approached Richard Allen, was they knew they didn't really have a case against him yet, but they felt, for whatever reason, they presumed his guilt, and they thought they would end up getting evidence later. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. They never did get any more evidence after they arrested him, so they're still relying on the non-case they had when they arrested him, which is really pathetic. The only thing they have now that we're looking at is these confessions that we still haven't heard yet. Still haven't heard.
That's like the last stance the prosecution really has left in their arsenal is the confessions.
Yeah.
But at this point, it's been all muddied and everything, even though there could be some confessions that say some stuff, maybe interesting, though. There might be a response by the defense by that and just shoots it all down. The jury's just had enough of this and just be like, nah, he didn't do it.
Yeah.
Or they could say, yeah, that's it. Oh my God, because in people's minds, confessions are confessions. You confess. That's it. Only if you know stuff and you say stuff and you admit to stuff that only the killer would know. Hey, you got to be the person.
Yeah, I think that I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed because 6 months into it, like you said the other day, he would already know by then all the things the killer knew. If he didn't, that's an even bigger problem, because that would have meant his defense team did not have any type of discovery by that point, which 6 months into it, you'd think they'd have the bare minimum at least, such as the crime scene photos and things like that.
I want to know what was going on in Richard Allen's life at the time, like why he chose to go out there that day, and what was his relationship with his wife at the time. Was his wife and him on good terms? Was there some fighting? Were they distant? Were they sleeping in the same bed? And I say that because for someone just to pick a random person on the street and do the most horrific thing to them, prosecution theory is because he wanted to have his way with them. And I don't want to be graphic, but there got to be something like brewing in whoever did this' mind. Be like, yo, like for someone just to pick a random person on the street to have their way with them. And a child is like a monster, but something has to be going on in that person's mind to even think like that, to want to do that to just innocent souls, whether it's children or anybody.
Yeah.
Just pick someone on a trail. Like, we covered Rachel Morin case. I mean, you had a person that just a monster that just targeted her, or saw her and said, "Hey, I'm gonna, do this." I mean, it's just weird. Like, it's beyond evil. It's crazy that someone would. It's demented that somebody would just do that, like single-handedly. I would say my personal opinion is single-handedly trying to do two girls like that on a trail. My thing is like it's a group of dudes probably that did this, and it's like a group of people. Had to be like a group of people that would all like embolden each other and encourage each other to do this, because I just can't see one person, because to pull that off is very, very hard, particularly Richard Allen's size.
Yeah, he's so small. Well, especially too, it was broad daylight.
Broad daylight. Yeah, you're taking so much risk.
Middle of the day. Literally the middle of the day. On a busy day.
I just don't get it. Unless the killer is like living right around there or something like that, knows those backwoods and knows that they won't get caught because they live in the woods. But a lot of people throw Ron Logan, but like if Ron Logan was the killer, why would he put the bodies on his own property?
Yeah, that part is kind of strange.
Like, why would a killer dump bodies on someone's own property? But I mean, it's just a lot of questions here, man.
So Richard Allen said that he went to the trails that day because he was looking down in the river and he was scoping out the fish. And we know a few weeks later he renewed his fishing license. So it seems like his reason for going to the trails that day, to the bridge, was to see how the fish were biting.
Well, I say, how is the relationship with him and his wife? Because like if he's in a happy, healthy relationship with his wife, and everything's good in bed and everything, you know what I'm saying? Like everything's good, you're on good standing, you eat with your wife, and why would you want to go even target two children on a trail in the middle of nowhere?
In the middle of the day.
It's
on a weekday, in the middle of the day,
with no prior criminal history.
Dozens of people around. It's just, I mean, it really just defies logic, first of all, for lots of reasons. One of the ones you said
he also kept his car and his gun.
He kept his car, he kept his gun.
And he went and worked in the community, and he was serving drugs, prescription drugs, and he probably gave prescription drugs to almost every single member of that community at one point.
Yeah.
He's the pharmacy technician.
Yeah.
But, I mean, evil blends in. BTK, right? Evil blends in the community.
Yeah. Kevin is saying that Richard Allen did sick Google searches. Well, I don't think we know that, actually.
Yeah, talk about this Google search stuff. Is that anything that will hurt him? What about what's going on with these Google searches?
Well, yesterday the prosecution said that they wanted to introduce Richard Allen, some Google searches by Richard Allen, and I don't know why they're asking for that at this late stage. I mean, for crying out loud, their case is almost over. But for some reason yesterday they randomly said that they want to bring in these Google searches, and the defense objected to that, and they said in order to bring in the Google searches, the prosecution would have to prove that only Richard Allen had access to these certain devices in question. And they said that Kathy Allen, his wife, would testify that she had access to devices too. So the defense is trying to say that it's not admissible because they can't show Richard Allen would be the only one making those searches.
Interesting. Well, what would Kathy Allen be making those searches for? But think about this, though, folks.
No, here's what it is. Just hold on a second. the Google searches, the information that we know so far about Richard Allen and his devices, his 23 devices, there was nothing whatsoever found on his phone related to Libby and Abby, except after the crimes, there was Google searches of the crimes. Kathy Allen was searching for Googling the girls' names, things like that.
Well,
so it's not unusual that he would be Googling the crime that happened in his community.
That's even him.
He is actually trying to help solve by going to the police and telling them he was there and offering information about who he saw and what he saw that day. So that, I believe, is what the Google searches are all about, is Googling the crimes and their names.
You would do that. Any citizen would do that in their community. Like if a horrendous crime happened in your community and something broke and they said they found 2 girls dead, probably most of the community is going to be Googling around trying to figure out what in the world is going on.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Just like when we cover cases, what do? We start going around Google trying to get all the information that's out there. Try to put the pieces together. See what this news agency says, what this news agency says, what's being said. Particularly when he claiming he was, there or, on the trail that day and called the tip line. He's probably trying to follow up on the case to see around. Or, like in a prosecution's mind, killers go back and want to read everything about the crime.
Yeah, I guess that's a theory that, perpetrators of crimes like to revisit the crime scene, things like that. But yeah, so that's what we know about his devices. I mean, remember last week we already had testimony to this effect about his phones and his devices. So this has already been up in court. This is not like a new topic. But for whatever reason, now they're saying they want to introduce certain Google searches. But defense is throwing cold water on that because they said they would bring Kathy up to the stand to testify that she also had access to his devices. So
I think Kathy's going on the stand regardless.
That would be really interesting. And I've been actually thinking and wondering, what if Richard Allen testified? Do you think there's any chance of that?
Possibly. Honestly, possibly.
You think maybe?
I mean, he could, yeah. I think it's possible. Would they put him on there, though, if the prosecution hasn't really proven a case thus far? Would you risk that, getting crossed and getting stumped up and, setting yourself up for exposure? I mean, is there even a need to do it at that point? But sometimes jurors are like, why don't the defendant testify? Sometimes, when it's a case where the prosecution doesn't have a case, by the defendant going on there, it really, sticks a dagger in the prosecution's case. I don't know. That's going to be a call between, is he a talkative person? Is he a people person? Does he know how to talk? Does he know how to articulate things? I mean, does he have other guilty demons inside him that could get exposed and make him, subject himself? I don't know. What do you guys think out there? You think Allen should testify at this point?
Well, we've seen both ways. I mean, we look at Alec Murdaugh took the stand.
Sarah Boone
took the stand. And then other cases we watched, Lori Vallow, she didn't take the stand. Who else?
Leilani Simon didn't take the stand. Just some cases they do, some cases they don't. I mean, it's.
But in the cases we know that they have, Alec Murdaugh. Let's just talk about Alec Murdaugh taking the stand. Did it help him?
No. Is he guilty? I think he is. Do you?
I think him taking the stand.
I think taking the stand might be in a good way to, if you're guilty of something, but you can give an explanation to the situation.
Yeah, I think in Murdaugh's case, me personally, I watched his testimony as it happened, the day it happened. I remember he cried on the stand. Now,
I mean,
overall,
if you
I
did,
can't say that his testimony hurt him, but I also don't think it helped him. But in his case in particular, that Snapchat video they had placing him at the crime scene with a timestamp and everything within minutes of the murders really seemed to be a smoking gun for the prosecution. So it was almost like him taking the stand was like a Hail Mary, I guess. And they were hoping maybe it would help. So I don't think that it helped or hurt. I think that case was kind of like, once that video came out, it was kind of, that was it. You know, even the jurors later said that video was pretty much what made them decide. So I think it was like a case of, well, let's give it a shot. It can't hurt, right?
if he didn't do it, take the stand, dude, because you could sit there and win the hearts of the jurors right there, and they can see right through the BS or not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I didn't do this. I like if you're really like passionate in your eyes, like, I didn't do this. I didn't do this. I'm innocent. I'm innocent. I didn't do this. Like, just think right now, you're being accused of doing this crime. What would you say to the jury? And look at the jury, and you're on the stand. I didn't do this.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, people can see through the act.
It would probably be a repeat of whatever he said in the interrogation that day, which, by the way, still has not been played yet. That's supposed to be sometime this week. We don't know when it's going to be played.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That the judge agreed to have it played. So in some ways, that could serve as almost like a testimony from Richard Allen, answering to these allegations at the time he was accused and arrested. So that'll be interesting once that finally plays. We've heard pretty much the gist of that interrogation. We've seen the different questions that were asked and the way that he responded, and some of the transcript. But I guess it'll be interesting to hear how people perceive it when they actually watch it, because then we'll kind of get some clues about what his body language was like, and facial expressions, maybe things like that.
Yeah, and also, you know, the jury, you know, if the prosecution does not, you know, really nail him on it, you know, and convince the jury, besides these confessions, that seems like the only thing left. I mean, for him not to take the stand, the juries might feel like he's a coward. Like, why wouldn't you take the stand? I mean, but will that be used against him in a juror's mind?
I don't think so. I think if I was going to say he should testify or not, I would say no. I would say no, he doesn't need to, because the prosecution has not proven a single thing yet against him. So why does he need to take the stand?
Remember, it gives them ammo too. It does give them ammo.
The burden is on the prosecution, not Richard Allen. And so far, the prosecution has not met their burden. So why in the world should Richard Allen need to help them?
Well, what about if you hear these confessions and the jury seems like, you know, you can kind of read the jury a little bit, maybe not. Some people can, you know, as people were saying, some jurors were rolling their eyes. We were told one juror was yawning at one point. I mean, if you feel like a particular, you know, piece of evidence, you know, could be convincing to the jury, then he might have to come up on the stand and explain the confessions. The confession aspect.
Potentially.
Like, why he confessed. Or why did he say this? Why
I think that the confessions, what I believe will happen, I think that the defense is going to be very effective in dismantling the confessions, because they're going to, for one thing, they're going to point out all of the things he said he did that he did not do, things that never happened that he said he did. And they're going to have their expert come up on false confessions. They're going to talk about his psychological, his mental state at the time, which will be the psychiatrist, I suppose, that will testify to his mental state at the time, the fact that he was receiving involuntary drugs, different things like that. Now, one other thing that I didn't know in his at some point in his either the interrogation or a different interview with the police, Richard Allen actually had told them that he suffered from anxiety and depression. So apparently they knew that already when they arrested him. And yet they still threw him in solitary confinement. So they already knew that he had a history of depression and anxiety when they did that. So the defense is probably going to hone in on that too and say that they knew he was vulnerable mentally, and they threw him in the harshest conditions possible. And then he deteriorated. They were giving him drugs. He was hallucinating. He was eating paper, all these different things. So they're going to go through all that period of time, his mental health crisis that he was in light of those confessions. So I don't really know how well those confessions are going to land for the prosecution because of all those factors.
Another thing too is, we've heard that grainy down the hill, right? We hear that voice, right? Have you ever heard Richard Allen talk? Because I haven't. Have you? Have you actually ever heard his voice?
Not that I can think of.
So imagine if we hear these confessions or any type of tapes with him. I know a lot of people are going to start trying to match that with that voice. That, that grainy. But what I'm saying is,
hear it, though.
We're not going to hear it, but, imagine hearing his voice. And what I'm saying is, though, for whatever he's saying on tape, I'm sure the juror is going to try to mentally match that voice with the voice that heard on the down the hill. I never heard his voice. I don't know what he talks. I don't know how he talks. But I would love to hear him talk. I haven't heard a peep from him. I haven't seen any clips, any tapes of anything of him talking. Have you?
No, I haven't. Tara in the chat said she has, though, and doesn't think it matches. Where did you hear him?
Well, maybe she knows him.
But yeah, so the interrogation video will be played for the court, but that's just one more thing that we will probably never hear, because everything is sealed.
But the people in the courtroom's going to hear it.
So only the people in the courtroom will actually hear it. So we'll have to hear their opinion as to whether or not they think the voice on the tape matches.
But they're going to try
Richard Allen.
They're going to try to match it. People are going to be like, oh, you kind of almost be able to tell right there, is that his voice or not?
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting, and keeping. I mean, even what I'm saying is by having him on the stand, opens him up for his voice to be heard more and more and more.
Yeah.
Like maybe the prosecutor just says, "Hey, say down the hill." While he's on the stand, the prosecutor says, "So did you say down the hill? Say down the hill." I'm sure the defense would object to that, but
Lewis says,
"Say down the hill."
Lewis says Richard Allen has a high-pitched voice.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't heard it. How does people know?
Yeah, I can't think of any time that there's a video of Richard Allen that I've seen a clip of. I think Matt Black had posted it. There's a video of him like in a bar where he's walking through the bar and he's smoking a cigarette.
I've seen him play pool and kind of do a dancing shuffle.
Yeah. So,
but no talking.
I didn't hear him talk or anything like that. But the thing about Richard Allen, I was saying this to you the other day. The one thing about Richard Allen, when you see him in person or on a video like the one in the pool hall, the number one thing, the very, very, very first thing you notice about Richard Allen when you see him in person is how small he is. That's the very first thing you notice. The day that we went out there and we stood outside the prison van, he comes out of the van they had that coat over him and they're bringing him in. The very first thing you notice is how small he is. And then when we saw him in the courtroom coming down the stairs of the courthouse, different places we saw him with our own eyes, the number one thing that stands out is how tiny he is. And it doesn't matter really how much weight is on him. You still see him and you go, whoa, he's small. So I think it's interesting that none of the witness descriptions mention seeing a small man, because it is a remarkable thing when you see him. He's very small. He's like 5'4".
Yeah, but small people can commit crimes just like big people can commit crimes.
Well, I know, but it's like, you know, certain people, you see certain people and things stand out. Like you see a tall guy and you go, oh, wow, he's so tall. Or, you know, you see a woman with blonde hair. Whoa, look at that lady with blonde hair. You know, there's certain characteristics about people that you notice first. And for Richard Allen in particular, the first thing you notice is how small he is. And it's just interesting. None of those witnesses ever said anything about seeing a small man.
Well, true. True. But
that's the first thing you'd say. Well, he was really small. He was short. And that's where you'd start. And then you'd say, and he was wearing, I think, like a blue jacket, or he was wearing this type of jeans or whatever. But the first thing you'd say is he's small.
Well, people are like, when I think of small, I know a lot of you guys know I've been in federal prison. I was in ADX Florence, Colorado with some of the worst. And I've seen Terry Nichols in person, right? The Oklahoma City bomber. He's a little meek, geeky looking dude with glasses, and he's just tiny. And he was capable of conspiring with Timothy McVeigh to blow up a federal building.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the littlest people do these types of horrendous acts.
Well, no, I'm not saying little people can't do crimes. I'm saying the number one thing that's noticeable about Richard Allen is that he's tiny. So as a witness, if I saw Richard Allen out somewhere, which I did at the courthouse and everything, the first thing I say is, he's so tiny. That's the first thing that you notice. And it takes a minute to actually process how small he is. You're like, what? What? Really?
Well, my mind's thinking small, and the Napoleon complex, they ain't getting nothing at home, and going out there and preying on children and using an opportunity by chance on some children.
Yeah.
That's where my mind thinks. My mind's thinking, this dude can't get no woman in life, not happy at home. Things are going on in his own house, wife, whatever. And, he's out there, and, he's, there's sickos out there like that. Not saying that, I'm just saying that's where my mind is thinking, why this guy would do this.
Right.
Feel a little bit of insecurities about his height and his weight, maybe a little bit of being small, and maybe, I don't know if all his life he's been teased and picked on for being small. I don't know. And, he sees some girls, and he feels like he can overpower girls because, I don't know.
And then he pulled off the perfect crime, the most sophisticated crime, the most perfect crime where no DNA was left, complicated crime scene, all these things. One body was dragged, one body had no clothes. He did all these things because he was unhappy at home, and he somehow randomly woke up one day and decided he wasn't happy at home, so he went to the trails and committed the absolute perfect crime, leaving not a trace of evidence behind. What?
A to Z says, love your coverage on this case. You are all willing to change positions based on facts. You both shine. Thank you, A to Z. Some of my mind is on this is you have to prove the case, and I don't believe the prosecution did it. I want to think that Richard Allen is the guy, because by just pinning stuff on innocent people is just, then the whole system crumbles itself. I want to think they got the guy, but at this time, I'm like, what do you got?
Yeah.
And they really haven't shown nothing yet in my mind. But then, the profile Richard Allen, I said this to you, Magnolia. I'm like, will the jury actually let this guy walk? Because when it's coming with two children, are they going to let this guy go back out on the streets?
Well, one thing about the confessions and the defense, what we know the defense is going to do, to defend the confessions. I think that these confessions actually could potentially blow up in the prosecution's face. I think it could backfire. And what I mean is, and I said this before, one of the things, he looks better now, like he looks healthier now, but when we saw him that time in court and he was like emaciated, he just looked like death warmed over. He
looked like Kane from Poltergeist.
The defense is going to really, really dig into that. They're going to describe some very horrific things, and the jury is going to hear the horrible treatment that he received while he was in prison. And that information, when they hear it, combined with looking at him in the courtroom, it could possibly make them feel sorry for him. And that's what I mean when I say it could blow up in the prosecution's face, because I think there's a high potential that the confessions and the information surrounding the confessions could serve to make the jury actually feel sympathetic to him. I think that's a possibility. And it's a possibility that the prosecution really can't afford. So I hope, like we said the other day, I hope that there's something there that's a smoking gun, because right now, I don't think there is. The more and more that I think about it, I said this before, if there was something in those confessions that was so damning, we would have heard it out of Nick's mouth day one. It would have been in the opening statement. He would have quoted Richard Allen's own words from his own confessions, and I think that we would have heard it mentioned a few times by now. And we haven't. We're 2 weeks into this trial. Jury selection started 2 weeks ago yesterday. The prosecution's case is expected to wrap up by the end of this week, because they initially had said that they needed 2 weeks for their case. So they're coming up. Friday/Saturday will be 2 weeks. And so their case is wrapping up. They've only got a few more days. And what we know that's coming is, we know the confessions are coming, and we're going to hear this interrogation video. All of those things could create this sympathetic feeling for some of the jurors. Because me personally, when I saw Richard Allen that day in court, I personally felt sorry for him. That was what I felt. I mean, I can't help it, but that's how I felt. Now, you have a different opinion.
I'll tell you why I have it.
I'll
tell you why I have a different opinion.
Creepy. Yeah, you think he looks creepy.
Well, I mean, I've been in prison, right? And in the in 2000, right? In around 2000, the explosion of federal inmates are coming in for child porn. It just exploded, and they started coming in. And the weirdos that would come in, we're on the block, and these weirdos that would come in, instantly who done something to a child just based off their look. And it's these weirdos that come in, and they're just small and skinny and they're just weird looking. And these weirdos, and you go, and they all huddle with each other, and they play Dungeons and Dragons, and they're not drug dealers, they're not bank robbers, they're not mafia bosses. That you just know before even asking for you actually have to demand the paperwork. But they all have a look. And I'm telling you, I saw thousands and thousands of Richard Allens. I'm telling you, I did. Now, some of them are bigger, whatever, but majority of them are these little scrawny, I'm trying to use the words, trying to be respectful out of this too, right? I have no sympathy whatsoever for the people that do egregious acts on children. I know somebody in the chat said, well, they didn't get SA. The victims in this case didn't get SA. Well, the prosecution says they were going to, more or less. But he got distracted by a neighbor that came home.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
but who would just lure 2 children off a trail down into the bottom of the woods? I mean, there's something going on here where someone wanted to do something very... Was it Odinist ritualistic stuff, or was there some SA that was going to happen? It was distorted, and then you just got to get rid of the evidence. But I'm telling you, I've seen the Richard Allen types. I've seen them.
Yeah.
It's just my opinion. I mean, again, being around these criminals, and I I just seen them. I know the ones that do the ones that to the children, and you don't even have to demand the paperwork. You see it, they're them, and they just have this look.
Well, I know. So I mean, that's what you say. Like you think
It's just creepy, darky, edgy.
You think he looks creepy. I've never thought that about him. Not really. I don't think I've ever said he looks creepy. I think he...
Would you trust Richard Allen babysitting a child?
Well, I mean, I don't know him. I don't know him personally. None of us knows him. I've never talked to him a day in my life. I've never even heard his voice. All I can say is what I've seen when I saw him at court, when, I saw the pictures prior to his arrest where he's sitting there with his little Chihuahua dog. I mean, to me, he just looks like a normal Midwest dude who fishes, who goes fishing and wears Carhartt jackets and work boots. Like to me, he just looks like an average Joe Schmo who lives in Indiana. Like, that's what he looks like to me. He doesn't stand out to me in any type of way, except that he's very small. That's really, when I look at him, his appearance, that's the only remarkable thing that I notice.
I think his lawyer firm, the lawyers represent him are creepy too. My opinion. I mean, they might be good people, but I just think it's a dark, edgy type of defense.
Baldwin and Rossi?
Yeah, I just feel like they're like weird, creepy. Like I just have that opinion. I don't see the shiny lawyers. I just feel like this dark, edgy type of. Well, McClellan, I got creepy vibes with McClellan too. Like just weird, greasy hair, and it's weird. It's just weird.
Dude.
The characters all involved here are just weird.
No, to me,
Fran Gull looks like a Wicked Witch of the East or the West. Like she literally looks demonic. Like Fran Gull.
She's the Wicked Witch of the Midwest.
She looks demonic.
Yeah.
All of them do.
Well, to me, out of the entire cast of characters in this whole saga, the most creepy by far is Nick McClelland. Like, I don't even think there's a contest. I mean, this guy walks around. I don't know what this is supposed to be, but first of all, his hair is like longish. And it's like slicked back with what's like grease. He literally looks like a grease ball. Like when you hear the term grease ball, you picture Nick McClelland. Like to me, he just looks so sus. Also, it's like he looks so different than he used to look too. It's like over the years he's changed his look. So remember in the Mason Lodge picture, he looks boyish and kind of young and handsome, and then now you look at him and it's like black slicked back hair with like, who does that with their hair anyway? And then he goes into court like that every day. It's just weird.
Well, all the characters are weird. I just have bad vibes all across the board.
Oh, so
I don't even know what to. I don't know what to think. I think it's Richard Allen. I want to think again, but I don't know. I don't know. But again, people are like, well, you shouldn't just judge somebody by the looks. But we're talking about some very evil things done here. So we can't overlook the evilness that was done here.
Yeah.
And somebody had to do it.
Well, yeah.
So what happens if Richard Allen walks? Is it just case closed and just move on? Then that means there's somebody out there that did this. Or did an innocent or a guilty person, get off because the prosecution couldn't, prove a case? And if Richard Allen gets off, does he get championed around the media circuits like a hero or something? A guy that was wrongfully accused, and would you still trust Richard Allen? Even if he walks, would you trust him? Would you be like, oh my God, there he is, the hero, Richard Allen, he's on Good Morning America. This guy was wrongfully convicted and he's a hero. I don't know. Maybe he just was, just got off because they couldn't prove a case.
I trust him more than I trust Jerry Holman.
Well, I think the whole police department botched this case.
Yeah.
I think they all botched it. I mean, just look at all the policies and procedures and protocols that were just wasn't done right in this case. It seems like. I mean, you're testing DNA 5 years later, 6 or 8 years later. You're testing DNA
at the 13th hour, too. When the trial is about to begin.
You find stuff after a crime scene has been released.
Yeah.
Blood still splattered all over the place.
Yeah.
You lose notes. You lose taped interviews. Come on, everyone's at fault here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of Fran Gull,
I mean, even the defense leaving all types of photographs all over the table openly for someone to take and then get that over into the hands of YouTubers. By the way, that guy got his charges dropped, didn't he? One of them.
Yeah.
It's just a big debacle, a big mess across the board. I think everyone's at fault. But is Richard Allen at fault?
Yeah, well, I mean, what have we seen so far that shows Richard Allen did anything wrong?
What have we seen?
Yeah.
I don't think he's acting like an innocent person should act.
How should he act?
He should be screaming and wailing and, doing everything he possibly could do to show that he's innocent instead of remaining silent.
So you think he should speak publicly without his counsel?
Yeah, I think he should speak publicly as much as possible.
Well, that's ridiculous.
Why not?
For one thing, he's not allowed.
He can do whatever he wants to do.
There's a gag order.
I would screw the gag order. My life is on the line. Screw that gag order.
Well, you're just being ridiculous.
No, we're not. Not really, because screw the gag order. I don't care about no gag order. I'm being charged with the most egregious act. My reputation is ruined. I'm going to restore my reputation and fight for my rights. And I'm going to prove that I'm innocent.
You're not going to sit there and talk without your attorney.
I would sit there and talk to every media outlet on the phone every day, all day, as much as I can to share that I'm innocent.
You're not allowed to because there's a gag order.
I would say contempt me. Contempt me. I don't care. Contempt me. I'm not going to sit there and be labeled as a chomo and sit in prison for 18 months. I'm not going to sit in prison for 2 years and everyone think I'm a chomo. Or think I'm a...
That's why you ended up in prison as long as you did. Because you didn't listen to your attorneys.
No, my attorneys... well, that's a whole... We could have a whole segment on attorneys. I personally don't like attorneys. I don't like prosecutors. I don't like attorneys. I like law enforcement. Ones that, law enforcement pretty cool. But, prosecutors, they play dirty. Defense play dirty. They all play dirty. The whole system's dirty. No, like, listen, anybody out there, if you were charged with what Richard Allen is charged, you're just going to sit there and be quiet and take it? You're just going to take it? Oh, yeah, I'll just sit in jail for 2 years and be quiet and put it in my lawyer's hands and just sit there and be quiet. Where I'm subjected to the worst of the worst of the worst in solitary confinement and maximum security prison. I'm not taking it. I'm going to sit there and hunger strike every day and get that word out that I didn't do this. And I'm going to have my wife and my family every day all over the media circuit saying, I didn't do this on every social media platform possible. And I'll speak as much as...
So you would have your wife and family put themselves in jeopardy of going to prison themselves? Prison what? Well, that's a very selfish approach.
I'm innocent.
I mean, if his wife and daughter went out on the media circuit every single day and talked about this case, guess what? They would be in jail just like him because they would be violating the gag order. So now why would a loving husband advise his family to do such a thing that could put them in jeopardy even more than they already are? They wouldn't. You're just being ridiculous.
No, I'm just saying, my approach would be much differently. An innocent person of the most egregious crime would be behaving much differently in my eyes.
Well, if you ever get accused of something again and there's a gag order on your case,
whatever I was accused of, I did. I admit what I do. Like, whatever I get accused of doing in the past, I admitted to it and accepted responsibility and moved on. Learned from it and moved on, right? But if I was accused of doing something to a child and I didn't do it, oh man, the JLR Army's coming out full blast. The JLR Army's coming out full blast, and we're going to go talk to whoever listens. And we're just going to keep it out there over and over and over. Screw your stupid gag order. It's unconstitutional anyway.
Well, speaking of that, we actually have a case that we covered last year that this exact scenario happened. Lindsay Shriver, the woman from, was it Alabama? I think she was from Alabama or Georgia, accused of getting her boyfriend from the Bahamas to do a murder for hire plot against her husband, the ex-football player. So we covered that case last year. So she went to jail in the Bahamas, so did her boyfriend and their accomplice. She made bond and she got out and she was allowed to come back to the United States so that she could be closer to her kids and her family and everything, pending trial. And her trial is March 2025. Well, she was ordered and the boyfriend was ordered not to speak to the media, not to do any of these things. Guess what? They went on Good Morning America a couple weeks ago and protested their innocence. The boyfriend sat there and said, it's time for the truth to come out. We did not do this. This was not a murder for hire, blah, blah, blah. Guess what's happening to them? They're both getting thrown back in jail in the Bahamas for doing that. So
are they really innocent or not?
I don't think it's advisable for defendants to sit here and go out and
well, you're already in jail, so what do you have to I'm talking about Richard Allen. Well, his family, that's his choice, whatever. But Richard Allen himself, he's already in jail. He's already at the bottom of the pit. You got nothing to lose.
Whatever. You said his family.
Well, his family too, but I mean, if his family don't want to go, this family don't want to go to prison, whatever, like that. They're not going to try to fight for someone's innocence. Then that's on them.
I'm sure it's not that they don't want to. It's that they're ordered not to.
I would do it anyway.
By the court.
I would do it anyway.
So
if my child was in prison for something they didn't do, I would be screaming. And I don't have any children, but if I had a child and my child was in prison, or my husband or my spouse or my wife or whatever significant other was in prison for something they didn't do and charged with the most egregious acts humanly possible, and their reputation's gone and they're factually innocent, I'm going to do everything possible to fight for them, including speaking out all day, every day. You ain't going to shut me up. And if you're going to shut me up, then you're going to take me to prison. I'm still talking. I'm still talking. I'm not going to take it. I'm not going to take a system that puts someone in prison for something they didn't do. I'm not going to take it. Just not going to take it. I'll do whatever I have to do by all means necessary. Bam. BAMN. That's it. Yeah, that's how I am. I mean, screw your contempt of court. Screw it. It's unconstitutional anyway. Gag orders are just, it's ridiculous. Gag orders and all that crap. It's a farce.
Yeah, Miss K, his wife, Kathy Ellen, she's a veterinarian. And I think it was one of the only vet hospitals in town where she worked. So yeah, I think people say she's a lovely lady. Yeah, I think that she's well regarded in the community for sure. But yeah, as far as this goes, I think Richard Allen is doing what he needs to do. He did try to protest his innocence 20 to 25 times during the interrogation, and it earned him handcuffs and solitary confinement. So since that day, since he got attorneys and everything else, I think it's in his best interest to do what he's doing, allow his attorneys to fight for him, which they're doing. No one can ever say that his attorneys are not fighting hard for him, because they most certainly are. So I think that that's how it needs to be done, and I think they're doing a good job. I think they've really pushed hard to protect him, protect his rights, try to address the issues of the treatment in prison. Eventually they were successful and got him sent to a county jail. So I think that they're working in his interest, and I think he's doing what he should do, and he should continue to listen to his attorneys, because in my opinion, there would be no reason for Richard Allen to say or do anything. I don't think he needs to take the stand. I think the burden is on the prosecution. So far, they have not met that burden, and there's absolutely no reason in the world that Richard Allen should give them any type of help.
Where's Kim Kardashian? Where's the Innocence Project? Where's the ACLU?
Right?
Where are they? You got an innocent
right?
man, right? An innocent man out there, ladies and gentlemen, that's on trial right now, charged with the most horrendous thing you could possibly do. Where's the people out there? Where's the people storming the courthouses outside, protesting? Free Richard Allen! Free Richard Allen! Nothing. There wasn't anybody outside that courthouse, really, right?
Protesters?
Anybody, like, in support of Richard Allen.
Well, I haven't seen protesters.
It was just like the other day at Sarah Boone. There was nobody out there for Sarah Boone.
Yeah, but a lot of the court orders and the decorum and all this kind of stuff has sort of put a damper on things. But I have heard some rumors that there may be some of that planned. Remember last year, I think when it was... I think it was one of the times when they were in Fort Wayne, or possibly the Supreme Court. There was a protest that was done called Groundswell or something like that. I don't think they had a whole lot of people that showed up, but the same group of people, I think, may go do some protesting, but we haven't seen it yet. No, we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, this is so wild. It's interesting though. I'm telling you, this is like really. I'm surprised it's not getting as much. I mean, it's getting some media attention, but man, this trial should have been televised, because this is just, it's unbelievable. Just everything dealing with this. This is interesting, to say the least. You know, and I'm strong on my opinions, just like a lot of you guys are strong on your opinions on this. You know, my always take on anybody that claims they're innocent of a crime. If they're so innocent, you know, speak out. I mean, I just, like, literally the charges alone will get him killed in prison. The charges of just being charged with this alone will get him killed in prison. If he gets out of solitary confinement, he's done. He's done. Like, literally, he's done. These guys, lifers in prison, have nothing to lose. They'll take a swipe at him just to take a swipe at him. For bragging purposes, for gang initiation and recruitment, whatever. He won't last a day in general population. He won't. Yeah. He never will. He's done. So the stakes couldn't even be higher. But again, if he's literally charged, the charge alone before the conviction will get him killed.
Yeah, that's what those guys told us that day that we ran into in Delphi. They said they believed if he hadn't been in solitary confinement all that time, that he wouldn't have made it out.
He wouldn't have been on trial right now. There would be no trial.
Yeah, now the other thing to think about, though, is let's say he's found not guilty, and then he's free and he walks out of there. He's going to have to probably watch behind his back forever.
He's going to have to move.
Honestly, if I were Richard Allen and his wife, if he's found not guilty, I would probably move. I don't know where I'd move, but I'd probably move out of Delphi. You know, Kathy Allen must be one of the strongest women alive to be... I think that I don't know, did we ever confirm if they sold the house or not, or she left the house?
I kind of just left that alone. I don't know. I mean, we did a report outside his house. We did the route from his house to the trail, to the route from his house to downtown Delphi. I kind of never really followed up on that, or I haven't really followed up on anything what his parents or his wife or is doing, or where they're at now. I haven't followed up on it.
Yeah, Shane said she sold the house, but yeah, I mean, it's just because it's not just Richard Allen going through this in prison. she's going through this in the outside world, and her entire life was upended by this. And, she just must have like remarkable strength, because she continues to show up at every single hearing. She's been there every day of the trial, supporting him. But yeah, it has to be unthinkable what she's gone through, being a respected person in the town. She's the town vet. Probably everybody knows everybody there, it's just hard to imagine what she's had to go through, and not to mention their daughter.
Yeah, a lot of people have a lot of opinions, and some things me and Magnolia don't even agree with on things. But what we can agree is this trial has been a disaster thus far for the prosecution. I can agree. I mean, even if they get a conviction out of him, it's just crazy the lack of evidence they have on this guy. Like literally, like presenting a case, and they laid a goose egg thus far. That's my opinion. I think they haven't laid anything out on this guy to say, hey, this guy 100% did it.
It's almost like the prosecution witnesses are testifying for Richard Allen.
It's weird. It's so weird.
Because every single witness that comes up has one more layer of why it's not him.
Now, Fran Gull, after the fact, the fact that she's not, everything that has been transpiring with the case and all her rulings, including what's going on right now, not letting the public see these exhibits and documents and only select media and everything like that. I personally hope that Fran Gull gets removed from the bench, or she gets some sort of punishment, for her handling of this case, because it's been a complete disaster on her part too. It's been, totally. I think across the board, many of these including the prosecutor, done unconstitutional things here.
Yeah. Well, I think no matter what the outcome of the trial itself is, I think this case is going to be a landmark case, and history will show that. I think there's going to be a lot of things that are addressed as far as the lack of transparency, all the lost and missing hidden evidence, the not testing certain DNA, all these things. There's just so much in this case that went wrong that I feel there will end up being some type of change that we see come out of this, even if it's just in the way cases are handled in Indiana. But yeah, I would like to see accountability for Fran Gull. And by the way, what I was going to say earlier about Fran Gull, she yesterday apparently, I think this was right before lunch, Fran Gull actually scolded people in the courtroom. She said, "I don't conduct court in your bedroom. I would appreciate you not sleeping in my courtroom."
Huh?
That's what she said. So
who was sleeping?
So apparently a few people dozed off in court, and she decided that she needed to address that. But this is the same woman who is forcing people to sit outside in the cold.
That's what I was about to say. That's exactly what I was about to say.
And not sleep, hoping to get a seat in the courtroom, and then she yells at them when they doze off.
So basically, it's to secure a seat at the Richard Allen trial, you must get out there by midnight, sometimes even earlier, and you got to wait in line all throughout the night. Then you have to attend the trial all, from 9 a.m. all the way to 6 p.m.
Yeah.
And most of the people that are attending the trial are a lot of podcasters, YouTubers, and journalists, that once they get out of the courtroom, they share the information, what was in the court. And only get probably a few hours of sleep before they have to go back into that line. It's not like you can sleep out there. I mean, I don't know. Has anyone had one of those tents? Maybe you should get a tent out there and just sleep inside the tent, where you just lay the tent out. I don't know. But she expects people not to doze off.
I guess so.
Because these are the same diehards that have been committed. You know, the people waiting in line for this trial are pretty much the same people.
Yeah, yeah. And another thing that's happening, actually, that they've had to do, some people like Andrea Burkhart and Lawyer Lee, they actually have had volunteers who line sit for them. It's called line sitting.
Do it.
So they'll have a volunteer that'll go and sit in the line for them to save them a seat so that they can actually sleep and come to court refreshed in the morning. So that's something that's happening. But yeah, it's just
that's what I was saying to you, Magnolia.
All the things have made this so difficult for people to attend and take part in the trial.
That's what I was saying to you, Magnolia. Why don't we just pay somebody $100 to secure us a seat, and then at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. they, get out of the line and we replace them. $100 every night, so then we can attend.
Yeah.
Right? Who wants $100 to sit in the line all night? $100 a night for I mean, that's $15 an hour to sit in the cold at night.
Yeah, they're using. And also, we saw Brad Siegel from WTHR. He showed a picture of his producer sitting in the line one night. So that's what they're doing. They're trying to organize it amongst themselves and trying to figure out how to work this out so that they can actually attend the trial without falling asleep. But yeah, I mean, if you're sitting outside all night in the cold and you come in to a courthouse and you're sitting there and it's warm and it's boring and this lady's on the stand going on and on about DNA and different things, I can see how someone might doze off.
If Fran Gull's in her house sleeping at night, she gets her sleep. She can come in there and get that special treatment. How dare you film Fran Gull coming into the, arriving at the courthouse, because you might get your camera confiscated and your SIM card removed and banned from the court if you even film Fran Gull arriving to the court, it seems like. Not just the jurors, but Fran Gull and Richard Allen, right?
Yeah.
I mean, show me somewhere out there, folks, of during this trial at all that Fran Gull arrives to the courthouse. How ridiculous is that? Because normally in trials all across the country, of course you're going to see the judge arrive and leave the court. Of course you're going to see the defense and the prosecution arrive and leave the court. Not with Delphi. You can't film her. If you film her, you'll get banned from the court, even from a public street.
Yeah.
You somehow will get banned or possibly getting confronted and stuff like that. Somebody should stand their ground on that aspect too. Anyone out there should be able to film on a public street anywhere they want.
Yeah.
You should be able to. So that I think that ruling is kind of ridiculous and extreme. But this is Fran Gull, This is a Fran Gull. This is Fran Gull. Fran Gull. She's not even from there. She's just some special appointed judge from a county over 100 miles away, and she just, comes into this Carroll County and thinks she's going to run the show.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that's what she's doing. She is running the show 100%.
Well, the legacy media is not challenging it because they don't want to get,
well, they don't want to lose access.
They don't want to lose access. Their exclusive Fran Gull access to these documents. So they're just going to be like, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am, and actually use it as territorial because these legacy media is the one that gets that and gets the exclusive access to this and puts everyone to the side. Like all the podcasters, YouTubers, and citizens are like second-class people when it comes to this case.
Yeah. Yep.
So they're not, the media is not going to call out her ridiculous rulings.
No, they haven't either. They tried doing a few different filings. It seemed like it was the same filing over and over where they were just various outlets were asking for cameras and stuff in the courtroom, and all of them were denied. But, I never saw any evidence that they were doing anything particularly, like they're not working very hard to push back, that's for sure. They're just kind of going along with it seems like.
Wild times, folks, but we are covering this case. Anything else to add, Magnolia?
Yeah, Marianne also posted in the chat that his coworkers said he has a high-pitched voice and it doesn't match Bridge Guy.
You talked to a couple of his coworkers. You went in there, CBS, right?
Yeah.
you were buying some CVS products and you were just happened to just talk to some of his coworkers. What were they saying to you?
Well, remember this was back in January 2023, and back then that was after about 3 months of extreme international media coverage. And in the CVS, when I went in that day, they actually, on the register, they had a sign next to the register that basically said something about our hearts are broken about what's happened, and our coworker being arrested, but we are not authorized to speak, or we're not going to talk, or something like that. They had it literally a sign at the register. But before I saw that sign, I went in and I talked to a couple people, and they said, they just said that they weren't authorized to talk about anything with the case, but just that they were very shocked by all of it, in disbelief.
Just a small town of just a few thousand people, a county of 20,000 people. And this guy, in the prosecution's mind, committed an act and then just blended back into the community and went about his business working at CVS in the local town. Probably, again, filling drugs for probably every citizen in Delphi. Just down the street from the Carroll County Sheriff's Office, all while these sketches and Bridge Guy were circulating all over the place. As the defense said, he didn't even get rid of his gun. He didn't even get rid of his car. And look where we're at. Is he innocent or guilty?
Yeah, actually, there's one thing I do want to mention. So there is one organization that I think could possibly do something in this situation. The Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press. They are made up of lots of different journalists, reporters, and they do a lot of work as far as the First Amendment rights and different things like that. And they actually had a victory in Indiana specifically yesterday or this week. There was an issue with federal district courts, they had this rule set up about a buffer zone around police. There was some type of rule that was in place that said it was a crime to approach within 25 feet of a law enforcement officer after being told to stop. And the Reporters Committee actually took this to a federal court in Indiana, and a federal court yesterday, I think it was yesterday, ruled that it was unconstitutional. The judge said, simply being within 25 feet of a police officer is not a crime. And indeed, important First Amendment rights are regularly exercised within 25 feet of law enforcement every single day. This ruling is a huge win for press freedom, said Katie Townsend. She's the Deputy Executive Director. Police buffer zone laws, like the one in Indiana, are clearly unconstitutional, and we're glad that the district court has agreed to block its enforcement. So that was a separate issue that was going on in Indiana, and the Reporters Committee, like I said, they do a lot of good work when it comes to First Amendment laws to make sure that things are, they're holding people accountable and standing up for the First Amendment. So I think that there's some things that maybe they could do, because that's the things we're talking about with the Richard Allen case, the lack of transparency, the burden on journalists to be able to have access and report on the trial, has been stifled completely. So I think this could be a case for them. Also, the ACLU perhaps could maybe weigh in here. I don't know. I'm a little surprised that they haven't already weighed in on this particular case. But those are just a couple examples of what I mean when I say this could be a landmark case, because this will be studied. Everything that happened here in the last 2 years specifically since his arrest. I think there's lots of issues there that could be addressed and brought before the courts, and hopefully we can see some change and better transparency in Indiana, because I think that's what everyone wants.
Oh, well, yeah, regardless if you think he's innocent or guilty, that's what you want. I mean, I don't, the concept, well, we can't talk. We got to protect the integrity of the investigation and wait for trial. Well, guess what? We're at trial, and look what we have. Almost nothing. So, I mean, why couldn't none of this stuff been revealed before? It's just, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Well, I think you answered your own question.
Secrecy.
It seems like the reason they don't want anyone to see this is because of what you just said.
Do you think it's just
they
like...
must have always known that they really didn't have a strong case, and they're trying to suppress absolutely everything they can, stack the deck in their favor, just to give themselves a chance of winning. And they have to keep everything quiet, keep it locked down, so that people don't look further.
So just pin it on this guy, throw him away, lock him away, throw away the key. No openness, no transparency, no cameras, and just the public will be like, who cares? This guy did something to girls. Who cares? Who cares about this guy? And life moves on. Case solved.
Yeah.
Is that the position here that's happening?
Yeah, that's kind of what it seems like.
Or did they really get the monster off the street? The monsters that live with amongst us. The monsters that commit acts and then go about and work at jobs and go around their lives like nothing happened. Scary to think that, there's some unsolved crimes out there, unsolved. And, some of these unsolved crimes, some of these people that are responsible for these unsolved crimes are blending in positions of trust and positions out there. And are, somebody told me a stat one time. There's like every one of us at one point is going to cross paths with 500 people that committed murder. Every one of us is going to cross paths with someone that committed 500 murders, and like 500 different people that commit murders. We'll witness and see murders in our lifetime, and you don't even know it. You don't even know. There is a lot of unsolved crimes out there, murders and everything like that. Evil is out there. It's all blended in. It's crazy. I don't know if I believe that, but I was just told that. I mean, scary. Anything else? We've been talking a lot this morning.
No, I think we covered most of what happened yesterday. So today's a new day, and we'll just see what witnesses they're calling today.
Yeah, nobody's posting anything on Twitter about today. It's all the recap from yesterday, but nobody really is posting anything about Richard Allen and Delphi today of what's happening right now. Guess what? We're like within about 10 minutes from the first break. So I think probably within the next 15 minutes, we might hear some things that are trickling out. As we said before, folks, it's usually court starts at 9, 11 a.m. gets that break. Somebody will come out. Usually the break is 15 minutes. You'll start seeing some stuff that said that, who testified and whatnot. And then court back in session at 1 o'clock, lunch to 2:30 or 2 o'clock in that range, and then a break at 3:30, and then court usually done by 5:30, 6 p.m. every day, just like clockwork.
Yeah. Yep.
So we'll pay attention, folks. We don't. We usually try to get what happened in the day and get the recap by listening to other people that were in the courtroom to kind of put it all together, and then we'll give you our take. We'll continue to do that.
Yeah, and so we expect this week that the confessions will come in, and also the interrogation video is supposed to be played at some point, unless they magically lose it at the last minute, which is of course possible in Delphi. But they're supposed to play that tape, and those are the things we know are coming. We just don't know exactly when. We don't have like a schedule each day of what witnesses are coming up, but The prosecution has brought up approximately 25 witnesses so far, I think is the number we're at. It's around 25 to 27. A few witnesses have been recalled a couple times, like Holman has been on the stand, I think at least twice. But overall, I think the total number of witnesses that's been called is sitting around like 25, 27. And their total witnesses that they said they would have, I think was about 40 or 50.
Yeah.
And they expect to wrap up at the end of this week. They had originally said 2 weeks to put on their case, and Friday into Saturday will be 2 weeks.
Sarah Boone trial was finished within 2 weeks, right? The whole trial was finished.
Yeah, it was quick.
Some of these trials drag out long time, you know, and it's there was another thing wasn't fair to Richard Allen. Didn't Fran Gull set a deadline before about how many weeks the defense could lay their case out, and since they wanted to go over, then they had to waive their right to a speedy trial?
Yeah, not last year, earlier this year, when the defense attorneys were brought back onto the case, they went ahead and filed for a speedy trial within 70 days. And so that put the trial date in May. And Fran Gull said, okay, if you want a speedy trial, here's the dates you can have. You can have 3 weeks, take it or leave it. And the defense said, we'll leave it because it wasn't long enough. It wasn't a long enough time. So now we have 5 weeks. It's 5 weeks altogether is the trial. The first 4 days was jury selection and other things that they did. And then we also have Saturdays, half days on Saturdays. So it's, you know, right around 5 weeks that they're going to have for the trial itself.
Does Keegan Klein come? Does Richard Allen's wife come to testify? Does Keegan Klein's dad come? Does any one of the neighbors come? Does Richard Allen take the stand? Still unknowns of what the defense is going to bring. Some of those former investigators probably will come, right?
Yeah, as far as I know, Todd Click, former detective who we played one of his testimonies from last year, we played that on our channel about 6 months ago. He's still, I believe, on the witness list, although he's had some legal troubles of his own recently, and so I'm not sure how that's going to pan out. But as far as I know, he's still on the list, and they have Keegan Klein, Tony Klein, I don't know if that's on the plan or not, but those are some of the witnesses we can look for. One thing, someone reminded me with a comment in here, one detail that came out yesterday as well is the guy who testified in the afternoon about the crime scene and the way they were killed. He said that he didn't think they were killed at the same time. One was before the other. So make of that what you will. He's saying he thinks that they could have been killed at different times. So, and that's just another part of this case that's so up in the air. They don't even really have a timeline. They don't have like a solid timeline of really anything. They don't, other than the timestamps of her video and the phone activity itself. But they don't know a time of death. They don't know when they died. And now it seems that they could have died at different times. So the timeline in general is kind of just like all over the place.
Wild stuff. What's next on our agenda, Magnolia? Are we going to Delphi? What are we doing? Are we going to the border? Are we going to Delphi? Some people are suggesting go to Washington, D.C. around election time because there's some wild stuff that might be going on. What are we going to do here, Magnolia? What are we going to do? Because I'm itching for a road trip.
Definitely not Washington, D.C. That's one of my least favorite places to go, unless I absolutely have to. But yeah, I think we could maybe go back up to Delphi last week of trial, something like that. And
maybe you and I will do the line.
There.
Maybe you and I will do the line. Like one night I wait, next day you go in, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe me and Magnolia will be out there bundled up in the line.
Yeah.
I want to go. Excuse me.
Bless you.
That's OJ allergies. Or no, that might be some of your DNA. Look at this. I got Magnolia's DNA right there.
Lord.
On my sleeve. Touch DNA. Transfer DNA. We got DNA, folks. Allergy DNA. Yeah, I mean, you know, the deciding factor, I think, was going to be about these confessions. You know, if I feel like this prosecutor has a slam dunk case, then I'm like, well, you know, there's maybe a reason not to go. But then I'm thinking, you know, if there's nothing of these confessions, it's almost like you have to go to see if this guy gets off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, and just sit out there and see when the jury deliberates, but are they really going to let him off? Or will the prosecution have some people up their sleeve, a couple of them, you know, even if the prosecution doesn't present a case and the defense does an elaborate defense and, you know, there's a lot of reasonable doubt, there could be still one or two of those pro-prosecution people out there that say, we're not letting him walk. And there's just a hung jury.
Yeah, that would be incredible if that happened.
Because, you know, they'll do the retrial.
You know, as a member of the jury, if I was on the jury, I don't know how in the world you convict based on what we've seen so far.
Yeah, but jurors are just like opinions like everyone has in the chat, you know, and like I have some opinions on things and you do too, and we all have different opinions here. It seems like across the board, there's a lot of opinions in here. And, you know, and again, like I'm in the position, Alan's guilty, but I'm also in the position that the prosecution hasn't presented their case to prove that he's guilty.
Yeah, I think overall, over the last 2 years, from where we started to where we are now, I think in the beginning, most people figured he must be the guy. That's what we all thought 2 years ago. Well, okay, they got the guy. It must be him. He did this, right? But now it seems that there's been a 180, and people who think he's guilty are in the minority now. A very small minority of people are still saying that he's guilty. And I don't know, like you're saying, you want to believe that he's guilty because otherwise, you have to lose faith in law enforcement and the system as a whole. And I think that's how a lot of people feel. We're like hoping and holding out hope that the prosecution brings out something that just blows us all away and says, oh, wow, okay, well, there you go. He did it. In order for us to keep faith in the judicial system, that is what we hope happens. So far, it hasn't happened. So I really don't understand at this stage how anyone can possibly say still that he's guilty. Like, based on what? Based on what?
Bridge guy.
We have nothing to base that on at all.
I want to go in there and
more evidence that he didn't do it than he did. So
I want to go in there and people watch the jury.
Saying that.
I want to people watch the jury. I want to watch the jurors and see their body language. I want the behavioral analyst to go in there and see, you know, study the jury every day and see their facial reactions, emotions, and what the jury's doing, because that might be a little telling here of how they're leaning on this.
Yeah.
All right, folks. JLR Magnolia investigates. If we don't go to Delphi, where are we going? The border? Where else are we going? What else are we doing?
Yeah, because there's that huge caravan coming.
Yeah.
That we talked about yesterday.
So we're in preliminary stages. Plus, we want to kind of watch the election process too, because it could be rocking and rolling with that aspect too, on all sides there. So there could be trouble brewing and.
Yeah, there's going to be all kinds of drama probably with the election. We've already seen it. We talked about it a little bit the other day. There's already voter fraud allegations going around everywhere.
Yeah. So, and probably political violence is probably going to escalate. And
Hope not.
I hope not. Of course, we say no to violence on JLR Investigates. All right, JLR Magnolia. Thank you, Magnolia.
All right.
Thank
See
you.
everyone later.
See you. We cover true crime 24/7, 365. No DNA. What does the prosecution have on this case? We're watching, and we'll give you all our take on the next round, the next day, probably tomorrow or maybe later on tonight. We'll see what happened in court today, and and we'll keep you informed, and we'll keep the chat going. Thanks for watching. JLR and Magnolia Investigates. We'll talk soon. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Be safe. Stay vigilant.